Hello everyone, my name is Andrew Lee and this is my ePortfolio highlight video. I just wanted to start off by giving you kind of an educational philosophy and explain to you a little bit about how I feel I'm going to approach being an educational leader in my building. The quote that I chose to pick to write about and kind of gear my whole leadership philosophy behind comes from Anthony Bourdain, and just his outlook on meeting new cultures and experiencing new things is kind of how I approach my classroom. I'm an English teacher, so I push students to practice empathy and equity in the classroom and just kind of travel to various parts of the world and various time periods. So that kind of is going to be how I transition out of the classroom into more of a leadership role. One of the biggest things that I found as I was compiling this is that I found that my leadership philosophy would fall kind of between democratic and strategic when it comes to leading people. And I followed up with another quote by Anthony Bourdain that said that I'm not afraid to look like an idiot and just being willing to make mistakes because as a leader that's going to happen. Another piece of my portfolio that I wanted to highlight was that I currently teach at Garden City High School. This is going to be the start of my third year in the fall, and previous to that, I spent 6 years in Manhattan, Kansas at Manhattan High School. So I have had some experience working with several different administrators in 2 different districts. So with that being said, I have 2 verification forms from the superintendents of both Garden City and of Manhattan. So USD 383 and USD 457. And my biggest takeaway from the conversation with both superintendents, Mr. Hogan, he talked about how when the district comes up with a policy or an idea, that it is the responsibility of the administrator to digest it and to figure out how they are going to own it for their faculty. Don't play the blame game. Don't try to pass the buck on to well, it's not something I believe in, but it's something we have to do. As the leader in the building, it's important to own what it is that's being passed down and to make sure that you believe in what's being said, and that will help motivate the staff to follow you. With my conversation with Dr. Wade at USD 383, his biggest thing was that you need to make sure that you hire the correct people. He stressed that it's important to make sure that your hiring process is strong, making sure that you vet candidates really well, because it's much more difficult to let go a candidate or let go a teacher than it is to never hire them at all. And so that was, I thought, a very powerful conversation to have with him. With Melinda Stewart, my elementary school principal, the biggest conversation we had there was kind of talking about IEPs and 504s and how they start in the elementary school process. We talked about building a calendar and a schedule, a master schedule for their school, and just the challenges that she faces with losing a 4th grade class to be kind of restructured and having one 4th grade class in the building that has a lot more students, and then making sure that she can communicate what is coming from the district to her staff. The biggest suggestion she had is make sure that you make the building a community and fun, and then those challenges aren't so difficult to have. Those conversations aren't so difficult to have when you are communicating with your staff. And then secondary, I have had a lot of conversations with both middle school principals here in Garden City, as well as all of our assistant principals and head principal, Mr. Norby. And I do lunch duty. I support students and staff during professional learning communities, so we interact quite a bit. I just wanted to highlight kind of two areas, the district and elementary, that I don't spend as much time in. This is also my bibliography. I found this to be very helpful, especially with planning to take the certification test to become an administrator, and just looking at all of the conversations that were had during my class time and how that kind of trickled over to the bibliography. With looking at the bibliography too, I tried to balance between using peer-edited academic journals that were found digitally through the Fort Hays Library, as well as kind of more Google searched Edutopia type places. So I tried to have a balance of those types of articles. Some highlights from the activities that I did at the district. When I was in Manhattan, I was the PLC leader for 6th hour, and so every teacher who had a plan during 6th hour, we met once a week, and we would do various things that I'll talk about kind of during this presentation. But one of those things was that Manhattan needed a new vision and mission statement, and so as their professional learning community leader, it was my responsibility to kind of put together a presentation and compile data and information from the staff to then give to the district to then validate a mission and vision for our high school. Another thing we did that we agreed upon as PLC leaders was coming up with a school-wide read. This kind of came from K-State. K-State, as freshmen, they come in and they have a freshman book to read in their freshman transition course. And so the high school decided that that would be a good idea. So we started with the faculty and staff reading the book prior to the students receiving the book. And so I was responsible for preparing discussion questions and answering any questions from staff as they started to read it throughout that whole school year. Another thing that I've done here recently at Garden City High School was be on the Equity and Access Policy Committee. So our school needed to rewrite the equity and access policy in our handbook to make sure that students are taking rigorous courses and challenging themselves for preparing themselves for life after high school. And so I was responsible for writing that and sending that off to the district. We also had a challenge in USD 383 for our high school. Our high school's mascot was an Indian, and there was a portion of the population in the community that didn't agree with having that as a mascot. And so I spent a lot of time talking with the district. I was part of the student council, and so we dealt with school pride and the mascot quite a bit. And so I was on a lot of school board meetings and conversations with principals and district employees to kind of figure out the best way to communicate internally and externally. I'll jump to elementary. Some of the things that I did at the elementary was, this was here in Garden City, and I sat down with Ms. Stewart, and I got to attend a few PLCs and got to present some things to staff and have some conversation of what it's like to be a teacher at an elementary level. Besides kind of being in a elementary class when I was in college as one of my observations, I hadn't been back in one, and so it was kind of reassuring and helpful for me to get in front of that staff and communicate with those teachers during these activities. I also am a trainer for the Kansas Can Competency Framework. So this is kind of just helping students promote self-regulation and self-efficacy. In Manhattan, we were kind of a pilot school that looked at this, and we're helping get the program off the ground and now transitioning to Garden City. This is something that is happening Kansas-wide. So I have been working with both the elementary and the secondary to kind of get this project off the ground here for USD 457. Another thing that I had the opportunity of being a part of was IEPs and 504s at the elementary level. A lot of my students, I don't really have a whole lot of new IEPs or new 504s by the time they're juniors or seniors in high school. So it was important, and I've sat in on a lot of meetings, but it was important to see what that looks like at the elementary level. I also was a part of the textbook adoption for USD 383, and that was quite a task. We had to work with elementary all the way through secondary and kind of come up with something that we can all agree upon, because the ELA curriculum doesn't get recharged again for 7 years. So this was a 7-year commitment, and there were a lot of opinions and a lot of emotions in the room. So then kind of transitioning to the secondary, some of the things that I've had to do at the secondary level that kind of fit into these activities would be I ran a lot of homecoming events and various activities at sporting events. So making sure that money is handled appropriately, and kind of developing the school culture. I was at the other end of a new curriculum for ELA once I got to Garden City 2 years ago. And so we looked over the course of that first year of having that new curriculum, kind of what in the new curriculum we need and what are some things that we're going to skip over, what are some things that we need to add because of our population being so diverse. So that was another thing that using this infographic kind of helped my team and I figure out and answer some questions on how we meet the needs for all students. I also have had the opportunity to participate in lots of professional developments and pre and ACT preparation, and share some of my videos that I've made in class for back to school night when parents come back to school and kind of walk through their student schedule. AVID is a big portion of our high school here in Garden City, and we are trying to become an AVID school, and I am part of the AVID site team, more specifically focused on leadership. And so how can teachers in my group kind of lead the charge to make sure that AVID is at the forefront of every classroom and that it is leading in students' lives in supporting what they need and making sure that they have the platform to succeed. I've also worked with the instructional coach to be a part of an impact cycle, making sure that I'm implementing those AVID strategies. I'm also the Fast Bridge trainer, so we use Sabres and My Sabres for social and emotional growth, and I help answer any questions and help run PD for that. That was something that I did in Manhattan that I've now carried over to Garden City High School. Obviously this year with the pandemic, I was a part of the COVID planning team, and we kind of figured out how we were going to end the semester and how we were going to move forward for the next semester. I was a part of the ELA hiring committee in Manhattan. This is the only piece that I don't have an artifact for because I wasn't allowed to take anything. My principal held on to all of the information. We wrote down on pieces of paper and asked questions. And so I was a part of that, but I don't have any artifacts for that. I have had several student teachers in Manhattan, haven't had any that wanted to travel all the way out to Garden City yet. And then I have also mentored a new teacher this year, and I'll mentor him again next year. We meet once a week and go over everything. So the biggest thing that I want to close out with is that I want to make sure that my energy and my ability to kind of create culture in the classroom and build relationships with students and really get to know who my classes are can translate over into being an administrator. I want to get to know my building. I want to know what their needs are, and I want to support them in the best way possible. So I wanted to thank you for listening and have a great rest of your day.